Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the AutoGuide Show. This week, we're doing things a little bit differently with Greg and I telling you all about this week's news and activities. And we're going to talk a little bit about, a little thing that might have happened in the news this week. Along with that, we'll have an interview and we'll have all the normal fun stuff you expect, so stick around.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love.
All right, so kicking things off this week, I did a review of one of the first 2026 models that we're going to be seeing throughout the year, which is the Honda Passport, specifically the Trail Sport trim. Honda's tightening the lineup for this, I was going to say second generation, but it's actually the fourth generation Passport, if you count those as Suzus in the 90s. And so there are only 3 trims, 2 of which are trail sports, and it's all about being more rugged. And so they took us to Puerto Rico and put us on some really serious trails, more serious than I would expect for Honda, right? And yeah, I came away impressed. Not to mention, it just looks really cool now.
Yeah, I think they've done a great job with the styling. I'm super excited to get behind the wheel of this probably, later this spring, even into the summer. Great summer road trip vehicle, especially getting up to up north, as we say in Michigan, where it gets a little more rugged. Yeah, I'm excited about this thing. I think they did a solid job, but I think also this type of vehicle is the name of the game right now. You've got to be able to compete with the Grand Cherokee, the 4Runner. I just was in the Toyota Land Cruiser pretty recently. It's just really what people are looking for, even if they don't need this much capability.
Mm-hmm. And I think you touch on a great point there, where people probably don't even need this much capability. And I know the hardcore off-road people are going to say, oh, well, it's unibody. It can't do what a Wrangler or a Bronco can. And it's look, that's not the point. We're on a scale here, and this can probably do most of what a 4Runner could outside of a TRD Pro or a Trail Hunter. And you still get that Honda livability on the road, right? It drives just like you'd expect. It's really comfortable and easy to drive on the road. Even though it is bigger in every dimension, it doesn't necessarily feel it. It has a V6, which I know some people are probably happy about because it's not a Turbo 4. And the Passport is huge inside. You mentioned the Land Cruiser, and the Land Cruiser is big, but I've had to sleep in the back of one, and you fold down those seats and it's not completely flat, whereas this is just cavernous. It's so big inside. It's something like 83 cubic feet with the seat down.
Wow. I think, what, to dovetail on what you just said, I actually kind of like the V6 in this iteration. I mean, Turbo 4s, time and a place for them. That's great. The displacements seem to be getting smaller and smaller, and that's okay. But I think for this, you want that naturally aspirated V6. And I think that will give this, the Passport Trail Sport specifically, the vibe you're looking for. And I'm also impressed too, they kept the trims so at least concise for launch, just 3 trims. That's shocking in some ways. Usually vehicles have so many trims, and we spend we'll write stories trying to explain what each trim is. Now, granted, it's the Passport Trail Sport, so how thin do you want to slice the onion? But I think that's actually a smart move for Honda.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to also call out one of the features that I really like in this is they have Trail Watch, which is a variety of cameras that are activated when you're in off-roading setups, right? If you're on trail drive mode, it activates automatically. That's nothing new, and a lot of other manufacturers have done stuff like that. It's nice that it has the overlays on the feed, on the center screen, so you can see where your tire tracks are going to be and where your exterior mirrors are. That's great, but the really nice thing is that it activates automatically in that drive mode, and it stays on until you hit 15 miles per hour. And then it turns off because you might have got to a quicker stretch of the trail. If you go under 12, it will kick back on automatically. You don't have to worry about hunting to try and turn it on, which is something you might have to do in a 4Runner or a Land Cruiser, as I've had to deal with before. And I like that thoughtfulness of using these systems in a way that helps the driver and makes it just easy to do. And if you do want to turn on the front cameras for any particular reason, it's actually just a button on the right stalk. So it's the usefulness of this. I think they're going to sell a lot more of this than the previous Passport.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's pricing, in your article, you kind of lay it out. It did go up, not insignificantly. It's,
Mm-hmm.
this is a bit more expensive. And I will say this, that would actually make me look a little bit maybe at Forerunner territory, because at the end of the day, it is still a Passport, which to me is not quite Forerunner territory as far as yes, capability. And frankly, I'm sure this is more than capable for anything I would need to do with it, but also just that cachet. If I'm going to spend close to 50 grand, maybe I just want to go with a Forerunner or a Wrangler or something.
Yeah, and I mean we know what residuals are like on Forerunners.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll talk more about pricing later in the show for a variety of newsy events, but I think
Yeah.
it's also going to be, I think my almost guidance to people in the market is you kind of got to just buy the vehicle you want right now, because it's just going to be super expensive regardless. So
Yeah.
roll the dice and see what happens, right?
Yeah, and I think this whole redesign has kind of made it made the Passport some vehicle that more people are probably just going to want. Like you see this and you're like, yeah, that's cool. I kind of want it. And so good on Honda.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on, we had our contributor James Riswick drive the Polestar 3, but this is the long-range single motor. And this is an interesting one for me because, like we said, vehicles usually launch with a ton of trims, and usually it's geared more towards the high-end stuff. And so I drove the Polestar 3 late last year in dual motor adaptive suspension format. Came away pretty impressed. But James drove this, which serves as the anchor of the lineup, the single motor. It's rear drive. It has a regular suspension setup, and honestly, it sounds pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a strong seller in the U.S. I think, given the fact that the northern part of the country will probably look for the two-motor all-wheel drive variant. But James makes a great point. Hey, this thing called snow tires is a thing, and I think frankly they should look to try to get this variant into Canada, in any other market they might want to, because it's a beautiful vehicle. I think with EVs. And I actually recently wrote something on the EV6 where I was debating the merits of all-wheel drive versus just the rear-wheel drive version. And I think, frankly, with this might sound crazy, but with global warming, our winters feel like they're shorter. And I live in one of the coldest places in the world, as do you. I sort of feel like with an EV, I could probably wing it with snow tires and all-wheel drive. So I think a vehicle or rear-wheel drive. So I think a thing like the Polestar 3 could be the right sauce for some people. Plus, with the single motor, you generally get better range, and I think that's a good point that many people might want to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this gets up to 350 miles on a single charge, which, let's be honest, is more than enough.
That's
once you're
outstanding, yeah.
once you're into the solid mid threes, it's like, look, you're gonna need a break before the car does, and if you don't, maybe see a doctor. You shouldn't be going that long. I think it looks good. I obviously haven't driven it yet, but I do think that the dynamics that Polestar is targeting, it's definitely on the sportier side, but I think that's good. So I'm very
Yeah.
curious if this is as engaging. And 300 horsepower, also fine. I think this is a really good package for a more approachable price, which is a tough thing for a startup brand. So yeah, fingers crossed it works out well for them.
Unless you truly need all-wheel drive, and maybe you do, this is perhaps the Polestar 3 for you.
Yeah. All right, Greg, we're going to move on to something that you did recently. I think it's probably a little unfair, but I'm just going to say it. I feel like the Defender kind of kicked off the boxy chic for the entire SUV segment. I think since this has come out, every vehicle has gotten boxier and we like them more because of it. So share your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I actually have four of them, but I mean, to be concise, I really liked my time in the Defender. It was my first time in it in about, it'd been probably at least a year, and I was pleasantly surprised. I had it back to back with the Toyota Land Cruiser, and I've sort of always been a Land Cruiser guy. I like the big old, like almost Luxo barges that could go anywhere still. And then the Defender and some of the other, things in this segment, they've always maybe been a little bit of a, they haven't quite measured up, but this one did.
Mhm.
And I really liked it. I liked it more than the Land Cruiser, which perhaps is a hot take. I don't know. I liked the interior. It was very comfortable, but it was so minimalistic, which is something I didn't expect. I think I've driven different trims of the Defender before, maybe ones that were a little bit more loaded up. This one was not cheap, but it had like everything, but it was just the aesthetic was so minimal with the exposed metal, like the body colored sort of Pangea green, also on the inside of the doors. All my passengers love that. They're like, this is so cool. Exposed bolts. And then, of course, you still have seat heaters, front and rear, infotainment. It's not like you're driving like, Prince Philip's Defender or something from back in the day. It's still modern in every way. But I thought they got that kind of rough and tough vibe. They really, put that forward while still making it feel like a fun to drive luxury off-roader. And it was a great week, obviously.
Hmm. Which engine were you sampling?
Let's see. I was in, let me get sure I get all the specs right here. I was in the 3-liter inline six, 395 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. All of that twist comes on, as I wrote, at 2,000 RPM, and you can hit 60 in 5.8 seconds, which for a vehicle this big, I mean, that's impressive. I was really ripping around town. Now, to be fair, the Land Cruiser had a Turbo 4. Both of these are like mild hybrids. So the way I put it was not necessarily apples to apples, but like same orchard sort of thing.
Okay.
You're still talking about a healthy type of food. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It actually even had me looking at used Land Rover Defenders just to see, hey, if I'm ever in the market, this might suddenly start to creep into that top 10 list of things that you see yourself in. And then maybe you go down the list and cross them out because of reliability, price, actual practicality. Unfortunately, Land Rover doesn't do well in many of the like JD Power surveys, so that would give me pause. But yeah, the cool factor is definitely there. And the swing out door, that's super neat. There's plenty of grab handles, a lot of really good cup holders throughout the cabin. One like nit I would have to pick though is the cup holders in the center console. Really small. Maybe I just drink really big coffees, but it was super annoying having to grab my like tumbler of coffee out of there and have the Defender kind of grab it back. But I like it. I really did. I think in some ways it's helpful to come in with a mindset of maybe having low expectations aren't fair because this is an expensive off-roader from a well-known brand. But my Jeep, my Land Cruiser, my 4-rotor preferences, Bronco. So this one definitely snuck into the conversation. And I think that's a good thing. That's why we drive these cars.
Yeah. I mean, what better vote of confidence than saying it goes on your short list of potential used buys for yourself, right? Like that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun. Family loved it.
I haven't driven one in a long time, so I guess I need to fix that very soon. All right, moving to, part of why we're doing a different format this week with you and I is Mike is in Korea at the auto show with Genesis, who just showed off another tease that we really need to see in production form. Genesis showed off the X Grand Coupe. I don't know, probably just coupe, and X Grand Convertible. And these are similar to previous concepts that we've seen. They've used this X moniker for a lot of concepts over the last few years, but these look even closer to production. They look like G90 alternatives, and they seem to already have V6s under the hood. So they seem, for all intents and purposes, ready to go.
I think they should do that. I think Mike seems to agree with that. These things are gorgeous. The concepts we saw, I think it was the New York Auto Show a couple years ago. definitely, turned heads. I think they should do this. I think it would be a good move for Genesis, which doesn't have a long history, obviously. Like, make something like this that might show up at the lawn at Pebble Beach in like 40 years or something, kind of start to write your own history. And, I've been very impressed with many Genesis vehicles that I've driven, uh, basically in the last 5 years at least. So I think something like this, I would have confidence in them to execute it very well in production.
I really like the convertible. The coupe is good looking, don't get me wrong, but the convertible is fascinating because it's a proper 4-seat convertible, and we have so little of those on the market. And my hot take with this is I'd actually be a little disappointed if it's the supercharged V6.
Okay.
I am just, it's a fine engine, but when your vehicle looks like this, you need better than fine, in my mind. And maybe EV isn't the answer. I know that the previous concept, there was talk that maybe it would sit on some version of the eGMP platform, and that would be very quick. And I don't think you necessarily need something super sporty when it's a 4-seat convertible, right? You want something that's more cruiser friendly, and so an EV kind of makes sense that way. But yeah, the V6 just, yeah.
I mean, I would think in Hyundai's, like, they've made some great strides with their powertrains. I would think they would find a way to tune that, V6 up a bit. I mean, time was they had a pretty good V8. I don't know what they're using it for these days much, but I mean, maybe you modernize that a little bit, throw that in there, make some sort of, even add like a mild hybrid application. I don't know. I do agree with you though that the convertible is the one to get. It reminds me of the Cadillac Soleil concept that we saw last year. So I'm here for it. Let's bring back some of these great sort of grad touring cabrios and see where it goes. I think there is a market because people, like, this is not like a car that frankly just anybody's going to buy. This is a huge halo. Like, it's a 1% car, but those can make your brand. So
Yeah. I like that you brought up the Soleil because I remember sharing something on social media like a year ago or something when that came out, that some alternate universe, we have both of those in production, this and the Soleil, and we're seeing comparisons of those, and people are buying them, and the world is just a better place. So we're inching closer by Genesis showing this. We could maybe get production.
yeah, I think they should do it. And Genesis, again, they're a brand that should take some risks, right? Where are they, 15 years old? I mean, and that's going all the way back to like the first Hyundai Genesis. So take some risks, do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, continuing on with the news out of Korea, Hyundai also debuted a facelift for the Ioniq 6 and is adding an Ioniq 6N line. It's important to note, an Ioniq 6N, which was teased in the images, and I can't wait for that because the 5N is one of my favorite new cars. But yes, the new Ioniq 6, it gets some updates that we expect with the platform and a new look, which I don't know, Greg, what do you think about it?
So there's like basically 3 Hyundai Motor Co. EVs off this platform: the EV6, the Ioniq 5, and the Ioniq 6. And I really like all 3 of them. The 6 was sort of the one that I liked maybe the least. Still liked it a lot, but the other 2 were ahead of it in line as far as just the where I kind of like enjoyed them. So this one, I think they've cleaned it up. It's a little less swoopy. It looks a little edgier to me, and it fits with some of the updates we saw to its sibling cars, the EV6 of the Ioniq 5. So kind of par for the course here. But the other 2, the updates are pretty subtle. Here, it almost felt like they gave it like a vague Porsche vibe. Not a bad thing. So I like it. I think this definitely is. I think they're going for like a personal luxury type of sedan, even though they're quite big. The last time I drove one, I had like the whole family in there, and everybody fit pretty well. So even with that kind of tight roof line, they're still quite big. So honestly, you're not going to go wrong with any of the 3. They're all excellent EVs.
No, I really enjoy how this drives. I understand that the looks beforehand were a little controversial. I liked it, but I know that, sitting it beside the Ioniq 5, it's always going to be a hard battle because that just debuted and was instantly
Mhm.
acknowledged as a great design. My hot take with this one, I'm just sticking with the hot takes today, is that while this is probably a more conventionally attractive look with these really thin headlights, I find it a lot less distinctive because everyone is doing thin headlights these
Yep.
days. And so I'm just like, yeah, it's good looking, but also if you remove the badge, you could stick a Chevy one on there, and from up front, it'd be like, oh, it's a new Malibu. They're doing that. It's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, I don't know. This is it, I will say this really fits with like what Hyundai does with their designs. If you look back to even the last few generations of like Sonata, for example, like they go pretty far out there, then they dial it back, then they kind of go back out there. They're swoopy, they're edgy. But I mean, for what it's worth, I really enjoy all of Hyundai Motor Co. Not all, but many of Hyundai Motor Co.'s designs because they go for it. They had Peter Schreier sort of in their design department for a while, heading things up. So I think the company in general is aggressive. And as I look closer, I see a bit of Mercedes in this too. It reminds me a bit of the electric versions of their sedans. So
Mhm.
not bad comparisons, I guess. Not bad comparisons.
Yeah, good company to keep. Moving forward, because we have a lot of news this week, Honda has shown off the interior of the Prelude, and it looks substantially different than an Integra or a Civic. It's the color combo in it is very fascinating. It's white and navy, and I mean, I know that'll get dirty quickly, but also people buying a Prelude probably aren't packing up and heading down the trail every week. So, it should stand out in a market that we don't have a lot of vehicles like this anymore.
This reminds me, actually, speaking of the Mercedes EV vibe, of Mercedes electric. It was the S-Class version that I took. It was a very muddy fall Saturday. I took the whole family out we drove out to the west side of our area, Ann Arbor, and my kid had mud on his boots, but it cleaned up quite easily. So like sometimes all white, especially if they're quality leather, I don't mean sumptuous leather, but almost like elastic leather, can clean up pretty easily. So fingers crossed on this one. I think this gives you a little bit of the Honda kind of motorsports historical vibe, which I like. Honda interiors have gotten demonstrably better in the last 5 years, I think, as have, it's an industry thing. You can't really, even in your entry level vehicle, you can't have a cheap and cheerful interior. It's got to be like decent touch points, decent use of materials, some sort of infotainment system here. And the Prelude, I think they nailed it. I think
Mhm.
it's, I have some issues with Honda and Acura's infotainment system, so I'm not quite sure what they're using here and how it would be executed. But aesthetically, it looks great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? I actually completely forgot to mention about that with the Passport, as the interior is a huge step up, and the infotainment is easier to use. It's not necessarily the best in the class, but it also isn't the worst. It's just
Okay.
it does what you need. So yeah, this is a car that I can't wait to drive. I'm very curious about a sporty hybrid because if anyone can do it, it's Honda. It's just will it be enough to convince people?
Yeah, this is going to be, I mean, this is straight for the enthusiast. It's a Civic-based vehicle. One thing I forgot is it's actually a 2+2 layout, which is super cool. So, and hey, you can still get a car seat back there. So parents, this is, don't sleep on the Prelude. It might still work for you.
Yeah. And wrapping things up, because we can't really talk about it this week because everything happened with tariffs, but we're going to take a different angle because we could talk an entire episode about tariffs. Will they also impact the used market despite not necessarily racking up tariffs there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be it's just an indirect cause and effect, a direct cause and effect, really, because what's going to happen is prices will likely start to go up. We've seen estimates anywhere from like $2,000 on the hood to, I mean, some of my calculations, I mean, you could argue $12,500 because average price of a new car in the US is about 50 grand. Is an all-time high, but you extrapolate with the percentage of the tariffs, you could see that, especially on like a higher priced vehicle. So
Mhm.
I think it's all possible. What's going to happen? Your vehicle potentially costs like several thousand to over $10,000 more. start to look at the used car market. Used cars, the average price, I believe, was about 28,000, according to recent data earlier this year. That makes my head explode. That the average used car is 28 grand. So yeah, it's going to be tough because I think the best comparison is we all lived through like the chip shortage, which coincided with the like first wave of COVID. So I mean, and that was tough. Used car prices went crazy. Carvana stock went crazy. So I think something like that could be in the cards again until things settle. And again, it's hard to see what the end game is, because it will take 4 to 5 years for many of these, like, if this were to play out where like production was actually moved to the US, well, that takes 4 to 5 years to actually like get the product plans in place, build the factories. Some companies could probably shift productions and maybe even open some mothballed factories. But to me, that's going to be more like an incremental situation. So until that all plays out, I mean, it's just going to be super expensive to buy a car. This just reminds me that I need to take my wife's car in for an oil change because we need to keep that thing on the road. It's a 17 Acadia. I don't want to buy a car right now. Do you? It seems like a horrible thing to do, a real pain.
Yeah,
so,
I don't personally enjoy setting piles of money on fire, but
yeah. So used cars are really going to be in for a bit of a bath here.
Yeah. So basically, the short of it is, if you can, keep your car. That's what we're saying.
Another sort of domino that will tip over is I would imagine insurance could go up, maintenance could go up, because what's the fallout from driving older cars is they cost more to maintain. You're not just like changing the oil and rotating the tires in your 2022 Honda Civic. If you've got a 2012 Honda Civic, I mean, maybe that's not a great example because they're so reliable, but I don't know, your 2012 Jaguar, that's going to need some maintenance, right? So you've decided to keep that because you just don't think you don't want to pay the tariffs on the new Ferrari model that you were eyeballing. So a little bit of an extreme example, but hey, Ferraris are made in Italy. They're going to get hit with tariffs.
Yeah. Let's shed a single tear for the person who's stuck in that situation. All right. Well, I think that's a lot for the news this week because we did have a lot to cover. So we'll be back in just a second where Greg and I will talk products and a certain sleeper of a vehicle that maybe you should check out. We'll be right back.
Swapping out your tires? There's nothing like it. With eBay, you'll find the feel you're looking for, from smooth highway rides to grip for rough terrain. Get all the tires you need at prices you'll love. eBay, things people love.
And we are back. And for this week, Greg is going to talk about something. Well, we're both going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about an important product as spring kicks in, hopefully for real this time, about keeping our cars or used cars that we need to keep for multiple years in tip-top shape.
That's right. Car vacuums are very important. I think, it's spring in some ways is one of the messiest times of the year. I think summer and fall actually, frankly, all year is messy. So let's not break that down. But you got to have a car vacuum. I keep one in my garage just so it's ready. I like to keep it charged. Cordless is always better. Now, people will say, can I use the vacuum from my house? Well, yeah, of course you can. But your life is a little easier if you have a purpose-built, more like a handheld situation. I like the Black & Decker one that we have on this list. I have one relatively similar to it. It doesn't have the greatest battery life, but it fits in the small places. At the end of the day, how long do you really need to like vacuum out your car? If it's really in a bad situation, you probably got to go to a car wash and get something with a little bit more, a higher caliber, sort of tool to get, whatever is going on in your car. But I think they're essential, and it makes your car look better because then you don't have like dusty seats or dog fur or whatever else. So I got to charge mine up and get out there.
I appreciate the Dustbuster being on there is a classic, and Dustbuster is something that I feel like everyone our generation knows about too. It's like, and not just because of the Chevy minivan that kind of was shaped like one.
Yeah, Oldsmobile. Don't forget the silhouette.
Yeah, but I really appreciate that that's on there, and I'm a fan of it too. And I like, you just mentioned dog fur, and so the Bissell that is on the list as well.
Yeah,
with the motorized brush is like, I'm very fortunate. I have a dog that doesn't really shed. Uh, but when you do have dog fur anywhere, it's so hard to get out. And so having that motorized brush to really like do a proper, nearly professional level clean for your seats is such a great move.
So I have the opposite of that. I have a 70-pound golden retriever who is, she's a gorgeous dog, but golden retrievers shed. So, I mean, she's literally broken vacuums from the amount of fur we've had to like vacuum up. We actually also have the let me see which one on here. The Dyson. We don't have the V12. I think we have like the V7 or 6 or something. And we use that more like around the house, frankly. But that's actually kind of a nice in-between option if you're looking to like have something that's good for like maybe your sunroom and also your car. That's like, it's not quite as heavy as like a true, like a bigger Bissell or something sort of thing for your living room, but it's, that can be good too. And most of them come with different attachments that you can use to take that from living room to backseat of your car. So,
yeah. I mean, I know everyone knows that Dysons are expensive, but as someone who got one as a wedding gift,
there you go.
They're worth it.
Yeah, they are. It's funny. That's a great wedding gift. If there's anybody out there who's about to get married, it's spring, we're getting up the wedding season. Don't register for a bunch of glasses. Like, believe me, we did. Get like vacuums, patio furniture, gift cards to Home Depot. That's what you should be registering for.
Yeah. Welcome to the AutoGuide episode on registries for weddings. Because
yes.
I mean, yeah, like especially with most people living together before marriage these days, it's like you probably already have most of the stuff you need, but you probably don't have a great vacuum.
It's true. It's true.
So, okay, so we've covered the vacuums, and then we're going to talk about one of our used car listings this week, which, I mean, this is the definition of a sleeper, right? So this is a 2007 Volvo S60R. And I don't know about you, Greg. I always really liked these cars. They looked fantastic. There was a concept that came out previewing the R when this generation Volvo came out, and it had 500 horsepower, and it was going to be an M3 fighter. And the R came out with 300. This one has more, substantially more. This is a modified car with 550 horsepower.
It's tough. We talk about recommending cars. I don't know about a modded car with this says 197 on the clock. Oh boy, I don't know. You got to really know what you're getting into with this. But it does, by all accounts, appear to be in great condition. The interior, which is often telling, looks pretty solid. And these cars were great. It's sort of like the front end of my career. I was at Auto Week, and we had an S60, not this one, but it was of this sort of generation. It was really it was different than like what the Germans did. Again, what you can look at this one, the mods are give it a little bit extra character too. The wheels look kind of sweet. And I actually think you probably remember around like 14, Volvo did that whole dramatic design reset. Looks great. It absolutely does, from crossovers to the wagons, especially, and the sedans. But it seems like everybody did that. And it's great to be the first in a trend. You go back at this point almost 20 years, not as many people like went in this direction with their design. And I think this actually is going to hold up very well. This sort of in between the Volvo box on wheels to the swoopy design they went with, this kind of in between generation. It's very solid. It's very much like a car for Gen X, Gen Y people, that in between group. And yeah, this would be fun. The one thing I would say is the infotainment of this generation of Volvos was pretty terrible. It was like, it's not an infotainment system. It's like a push button phone in the center stack. So good luck with that.
Yeah, you might have to get some sort of modern, hatchet kind of thing to just fit in and use your CarPlay or something. But yeah,
it's cool though. This would be a great car for someone who has a relatively short commute and wants to have fun on it. You don't want to drive this 4 hours. You don't want to take this anywhere crazy or track it probably, although it's certainly powered up to do that. But you want to have a fun commute, like maybe 5 to like 20 miles. This is it. You're probably not going to be too far out in the wilderness. So if like things start to break down, this would be a great sort of suburban cruiser. So
We're going to be back to talk with our special guest. That will be Mike and I, because, the magic of recording. We did that at a different time. And then after that, Greg and I will be back to talk about what's next. So stay tuned.
Picture this. You're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease, and because you're committed to driving that thing further than the odometer can handle, you start to think to yourself, you know what, I could probably also use some new brakes, some shocks and struts, and this baby deserves a new air filter. So you head right back to eBay. You can find any part you need there, it's unreal. From wipers and headlights to cold air intakes, exhaust systems, and even that turbo you've had on your mind, eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. Because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major, and mods are always intense, so you need to know that these parts guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in wrench first. And in the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back, simple as that. You know what you love more than the car itself is driving it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance, and you're locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay, minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info and get the exact parts that fit. When you see the green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. So now that you know all that, imagine standing at that open garage door looking at your car you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible. Whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. All right, welcome back. This week we have a special guest joining us from Nashville. Is that right, or just in Tennessee?
Yeah, Nashville.
Nashville. All right, if you could just introduce yourself and what you do for all of our listeners.
Tyson Jominy, Vice President of Data and Analytics at JD Power. Real data nerd guy.
You're the guy that I've been following for years. I think we've met before in person, but we've talked online for over a decade at least. And you're the one that I love watching when people just throw out random thoughts or facts, and then you're like, well, actually, this is what's really happening, because there's too much of the former in this industry and not enough of the latter.
I try to keep that to a minimum. I don't have enough time to argue with people online, but it's mostly slapping my head when I see things. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been into the data that you have, but I have worked for an OEM and I've worked on a dealership side. So I get frustrated seeing people say things. It's like, because you don't understand who's buying cars and what they want. So I can't imagine what it must be for like you when you know all the data.
I have all the data available. I don't necessarily know it. Like I'll get some like esoteric vehicle questions, and it's like, I could look it up, but you guys know I don't like memorize every vehicle, right?
Yeah.
You like
Quick,
cars? Name every car ever.
Exactly.
Why was the SVX discontinued? Go.
I know. I haven't mentioned your poster yet, but I'm very impressed. I love it.
You're talking about the Alero over here, right?
Oh, well, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I mean, Mount Rushmore right there.
Yeah. So, as we've mentioned, sort of what you do, was this a matter of you liked cars and you got into this, or was it you were like data and it just happened to be cars?
I like cars. I've always liked cars. I grew up in a car family, which maybe we'll get into. I don't know. It's a lot of my story, so I guess we'll have to get into it. But I grew up in a car family, always kind of doing car things. The Pikes Peak, hill climb races, watching those. But my story probably is that my dad, he grew up in Detroit in the 60s. So he was exposed to all the best cars that you could think of, and he was responsible for buying cars for his family as the oldest kid and the one most into cars. So he got to pick out cars for his parents to drive. So he drove some pretty cool stuff. And then eventually he got into rallying, one lap of America in a lot of races, did quite well there. So I always grew up with cars around me and thinking about the auto industry.
No, Mom, you need the Challenger 426 Hemi. It's a good car to take to get groceries.
And that didn't stop though. Like when I was growing up, my he was in charge of buying cars still for my grandma, so he got her a Taurus show, the original first
Oh
gen.
wow,
But
nice.
she was well into her years, so he got her the automatic. But he still had that vehicle, and most of my cousins were banned from driving it because of the way we drove it. But yeah, so he continued that in life. We had cool cars growing up. Like my cousin had a Buick Grand National, Dodge Omni GLHS. I mean, you
Oh
pick like the
wow,
random performance car, and we kind of had that in and around my family.
that's awesome. Okay, well, since you're on that, we'll go into what was your first car?
A 92 Jeep Wrangler 4-cylinder with a 5-speed, soft top. I grew up in Florida, so it was a good car in Florida, a good high school car. But I went to college in Indiana, and I would drive it back and forth at least twice a year from South Florida all the way up to Indiana. It was about a 16-hour drive. And, the 90s Wrangler YJs, you got behind a semi truck and the windows started flapping in and out the whole way. And I would attribute my hearing loss pretty much to the 8 years I owned that Wrangler and driving on the interstate. But I mean, I loved it. I love Jeeps. I mean, those watching, you could see I still love Jeeps. I've got them on my wall, got posters of them. You can't control who you love. And I fell in love with Jeep at a very young age. And I'm on my 4th Wrangler right now.
Nice. They've become a little more civilized over the last 30 years.
Too civilized, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No?
Well, I mean, yeah, too civilized from what they were, but you drive it back to back with any other SUV, and you're like, oh yeah, this thing still, likes to wander a bit on the highway. But the 90s, yeah. Oh man, did you even have 3-digit horsepower in that thing?
It was 123.
Okay.
But it didn't have cruise control. It didn't have tilt steering. It had an AC unit that the dealer installed underneath the dash, like it was just tacked on underneath, and it just dripped water everywhere. It went through like 4 water pumps in a row. I mean, it was just crazy 90s quality. But it got me to and from school. Had an out of town girlfriend and visited her like every other weekend or so. So I got a lot of miles out of that thing.
Yeah, I can imagine the RPMs on the interstate in 5th gear.
You couldn't hear it over the wind noise. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Tyson, I have a question for you because you drove a Wrangler as your first vehicle. Do you agree with, I think it was Enzo Ferrari who said that the Wrangler is America's only sports car?
Not true in absolute, but yeah. No, I do love it. It's one of those things. Slow car fast is more fun than a fast car you can't drive. And my first 3 Wranglers were about the slowest vehicles I've ever encountered in my life. It's probably good. That's probably why I'm still here, as a matter of fact. So it's not so bad. But yeah, very famous Enzo. Maybe not even necessarily his quote, as I understand it, but
yeah.
I think it was the head of Ferrari US who said it. But I still like to think of it that way, like a Hemingway quote. You can just apply it, and it's great.
Or Churchill. It's like,
exactly. Right?
Who knows?
I mean, they have come a long way. With last summer, I had to go to Detroit to pick it up for a 3-way comparison, and I had the 392 Wrangler in the Tuscadero pink. And if I had 6 figures just sitting around, I would buy that thing. I drove it from Detroit to Toronto, and then we drove it 2 hours east of Toronto, and then back to Toronto and back to Detroit. And that was 5 full tanks of premium fuel. It like gas, but it is so fun. Yeah, it is such a ridiculous Jeep. So I get that. Like, I'm not a Jeep person, but every time I drive one, I'm like, I totally get this. It's just I don't do enough Jeep things to rationalize having one.
And there's also, I mean, nowadays, because the market's so different than what it was in the 90s, the Wrangler is one of the most affordable drop top vehicles you can buy now. And like I've had numerous friends and family members say like, well, that's what I'm going to get because I want a convertible, and what else do I have?
Mm-hmm.
Do we count the Wrangler as a convertible? In our data we don't call it a convertible, but we don't have a designation like open top or anything. But yeah, no, I agree. It's one of the few convertibles now. I mean, we weren't going to talk data, Mike. You promised me we weren't talking, but it's like, coupes and convertibles now are about 0.7% of industry sales. I want to say something like that.
Man.
Excludes Bronco, excludes Wrangler. That would obviously change the calculus there. But I mean, Americans, Canadians, we're not buying anything fun anymore. We just buy boring, practical vehicles, you know. But all the fun stuff has either gone away or become an SUV.
It's funny you say that, because last summer we got a 90 NA Miata and a 92 968 convertible, and we did a fun little like, this is what cars used to be, and we came to a very similar conclusion. We said back then cars are so analog, might as well get a convertible and have fun. Nowadays everyone wants the car to drive for you, and they want, you know, 17 screens showing them stuff while they drive, and there's no reason to care about driving if you're not into cars. So I get it. But my other thought is the 60s convertibles, 70s regulations killed them off. They came back in the 90s. You get trackers and metros, and they're all gone. So maybe 0.7%, we're at that point where they're all going to start coming back again.
Did you say Cascada? I heard Cascada in there. Is that, no?
You're hoping and praying.
For my son's first car, we got him an ND Miata, and his classmates were like, "What is this? What? We've never seen such a thing." And when a teacher backed into it in the parking lot, she's like, "Well, it's not my fault. There's such a little car out there." It's just like, you know, like no one had ever heard or seen a Miata in the entire school. It was so strange. But he loved it. Wasn't made for a 16-year-old boy roughhousing as much as he did. But it was a fun car for the 2 years or so we had it.
So speaking of cars you've had, you've obviously owned tons of Wranglers, but what is the either the most favorite car you owned or the one you wish you never sold?
Now I have worked for a lot of automakers. Well, at least I worked for several automakers. So I have had so many company cars over the years. You know, the one I only had for about 18 months. I had an Acura TSX, the first gen, with the 6-speed. And it was such a nice car. I love revving that thing out. The shifter was like the best manual transmission I have encountered. There may be some out there that were better, but I love that car, and I drove it from when I got out of grad school to then I had to get rid of it, and I sold it to a woman. So I owned it for about.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
we're back. Is that me?
You're back. Yeah,
we're
you're
back.
breaking up, but you're back.
you said you sold your car. That's what we got last. Was you had to sell the TSX.
So I had a TSX, and I owned it until the day I started working at Nissan. And the woman I sold it to, about 5 years later, she called me and said, "I just got a job at Nissan, and I'm here with your old car. Do you want to come see it again before I get rid of it, because I'm starting at Nissan?" So I got to drive it one last time. You know, how often does that happen, that you get to have one more date with, you know, the one that got away, right? So I had to get rid of it, and it went to someone, and she appreciated it. And then she ends up working at Nissan also with the car. And it was good to reunite it with it one last time. But, you know, the past is a foreign country, right? You know, they do things differently there. So it was good to get back into it. It didn't feel the same. You know, everything was a little dated and a lot rougher than I remembered it.
Yeah, well, it's also 5 years down the road. That's like a lot of old cars. I say, you know, don't drive your heroes. I've driven a couple old cars that were in pretty decent shape, and I'm like, this is how it was. I've driven some that were amazing, like the 90 Miata and the FD RX-7, but some other ones, times have moved on.
And I am getting some latency here, so if we have to go back again, let me know.
Yeah, no problem. It's funny you got to actually drive it 5 years later. When I sold my SVX, it only had a couple months, which I wish I never did. The guy who bought it was in the Subaru club. So when I started working at Subaru, he actually brought it to 2 meets. So I did get to see it twice. But and I always said to him, when you want to sell it, let me know. But we lost contact, and I don't know. I don't know where that car is. I keep checking on the online listings to see if it pops up somewhere. But
did he get rid of it, or you guys just haven't spoken, or do you know that he's?
No, I've just lost contact. He was a huge Subaru guy. He was the kind of guy. I remember this, he had an Outback. I know we're getting off topic here, but he bought an Outback, and all the switches and stuff he either didn't have in the car or he didn't like where it was, he redid. So all like the dummy panels, he put in his own new switches. Like he rewired his whole car, and it all looked like OEM, like so well. Like the time he'd spent working on this stuff. So I knew like this is the right guy to send the SVX that needed some work. And yeah, he fixed it right up.
Man, that's cool.
So you worked at all these manufacturers, some of them through some pretty good years of cars. Is there one that you just kept staring at that you obviously couldn't have as a company car, but wish you got to take out for a spin that you never had a chance?
When I worked at Ford owned Jag and Land Rover, Volvo, and all those, fun brands. They did give me a Jag XKR for a couple of nights, which was fun. And then I asked for an Aston Martin, and they were like, do you know how much an Aston Martin costs? And I was a financial analyst, and I was in charge of like a $250 million budget. And I'm like, they entrust me to $250 million of company money to track, but I'm not allowed to drive a $200,000 car. That makes no sense, Like the disconnect between reality and numbers on a spreadsheet was pretty stark. So they wouldn't let me drive that. The car I never got from that time that I always loved was the Contour SVT. I only got to drive it a couple times, but it was good. Looking back, it's kind of dumb, but it was such a fun car, and I love the sound of it. But I had a 4-banger Contour during that time, so I could make noises, make engine revving noises and muffler noises, but I didn't have anything near that.
Didn't have the cool V6 under the hood.
No.
It was back in the day when we had so many car options, whereas now every automaker is like 2, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's back when, like Ford was SVTing everything. You had the Focus, the Contour, the Mustang. Ford had some really cool cars. A lot of them are just coming straight from Europe too, which was nice.
The funniest thing to me is I see more Jag X types that was based on the Contour Mondeo than I ever see Contours anymore. Like I'll still see X types out there. And Contour outsold X type probably 100 to 1, and nowadays there's no Contours, but there's still X types.
I guess it's because the people who bought Jags are now 80 people who bought X types. I assume that they weren't exactly young folks, whereas people bought Contours and probably put them into a wall or into a post lamp or something, right? Like.
This is going to show you my car sickness and glutton for punishment. I almost bought an X-Type wagon manual when I bought my RX-8. Wow. Those were the two cars I was looking at.
Obviously.
Yeah. X and X, right? They both had X's.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere out there was maybe a Cougar XR. Did we ever get the XR7 as a badge? That final Cougar, the new Edge one?
No, never an XR7. It was just the Cougar. But I actually picked the RX-8 because I figured it would be more reliable than the I used X-Type.
Oh, you sweet child.
It probably was too.
Summer child.
Yeah, that was back before I realized how much working on cars and never driving them isn't fun. It's actually fun to actually have them on the road every once in a while. So, yeah. So it sounds like you've been in this industry on the finance data side right from the start. Is that what you went to school for, or did you just kind of luck your way into it?
I was a finance major undergrad, and pretty much knew by the time I was about to graduate, I wanted to get into the auto industry. So my story is probably not different from actually a lot of people's stories I know through Twitter and other places, which is like I begged, borrowed, scammed, did whatever I could to get in. Pulled every available contact, told everyone my story. I mean, really, talking to people. If your goal is to get into the auto industry in some way, tell everybody you know. Was sort of that lesson, and it worked out that Ford had a summer internship position in what was called community affairs, which is probably now just social media. But back then in the 90s, it was go put on habitat build projects and go have each plant would have like a community outreach day, whether it's tree planting or cleaning up a park or something. All the good initiatives that companies do were managed centrally by a function in the glass house at Ford. that was a part of like the government affairs. Anything with affairs in the name was all this one big department. So I got to get in on the inside of an auto company. I still remember driving up to Ford the first time, working there as an intern, and to me, it really was one of those experiences. Like I did not forget, like, wow, I actually work in the glass house. And it meant a lot to me. But let's be honest, it was community affairs. I went to school in finance. It was not, it was to get my foot in the door. And thankfully I did. And then that led to a full-time offer, because when Ford came to recruit on campus, I was calling everybody I knew from that summer to say, do you know this recruiter? Can you please put in a good word, whatever. So I did all the legwork to make the interview as smoothly as possible when it actually happened.
Nice. And then the rest is history. Nissan, JD Power, all sorts of places.
Well, so when I actually got an offer from GM and an offer from Ford coming out of undergrad. So I got to go to both, and I was there. I did my interview down at the Rensen for GM, and Rick Wagner was there. I mean, it was all all these names I'd been hearing about, and it was all super cool to be in the same room with them. And GM offered me accounts payable. Ford offered me product development finance. So it was like
pretty easy decision.
Yeah, right. So sometimes the difference between two paths is just they offer you accounts payable, or the other one offers you product development. So I took the product development role, and I was like, great, I'm gonna be working on Mustangs and F-150, all sorts of cool stuff, right? So they put me on the dump truck, F-650, 750. Hey, you got to start somewhere, right? It was super cool team because it was a small program. So everybody had to do so many different tasks because there just weren't enough bodies on that. So my team was the Super Duty platform, which was launching the Excursion, as well as the F650, 750. So I got in the dump truck and learned so much about the industry, about working. It's my first real job, and just a great way to start. Nothing but wonderful things to say about working at Ford. It's a great place to work.
Did you and your team ever expect that the Excursion would be so sought after on Bring a Trailer all these years later?
That was the goal. That was part of the plan. Develop a vehicle, not sell very many of them in their lifetime, be accused of all sorts of very bad things to the environment as a result, and then have it be a collectible 30 years later. That 4-dimensional chess was part of the job description.
Naturally.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that name's built up, and look at how many Excursions Ford sells now, like tens of them.
Took over the world.
Yeah, that's probably the one I see the least out of all those big guys. But we drove one not too long ago, and it's okay.
Yeah.
No, we drove an Expedition.
Oh yeah, that's right. We didn't even get into the Excursion. That's right.
The funny thing is the Wagoneer. I think it's got to be the Wagoneer L, but it's bigger in every dimension than the Excursion. And like these days, it's just, hey, vehicles are big. Back then, the Excursion, Ford declared, we're never building anything this big ever again. But nowadays, the Wagoneer is in the Wagoneer long wheelbase, bigger in every dimension.
It's funny how they took so much flack because it was called the Excursion and was a line where GM had 2,500 Suburbans all along, but people complained about the Suburban, but they never went crazy about it. It was like the same idea, but yeah. The Wagoneer is a very spacious vehicle though, because it's so big.
It was not supposed to be called the Excursion. It was called the Equator until really, really late, by the way.
Interesting.
Yeah, and eventually, they gave it the name, and I guess Suzuki used Equator later on for a pickup truck. Mm-hmm. But they, I think that's a pretty common thing for everyone to kind of use one name. But it was going to be called Equator up until really close to launch. The tooling for the word Equator was done, and there's a couple of vehicles still floating around Dearborn with the words Equator on them.
That'll be the ultimate Bring a Trailer sale then, is one of those.
Yeah, you can buy one of those.
I assume the one that was on Bring a Trailer had the V10 at least.
The diesel was amazing.
Yeah. Well, the diesels in trucks like that, or SUVs, whatever you want to call them, is always such a good match because you're probably hauling a lot of people or stuff, so you might as well have the diesel.
Right. The range was like 800 miles.
I can't imagine how big the fuel tank was. Just,
Dump truck fuel tank.
yeah, that's all tied together.
So, sorry, go on, Kyle.
Well, I have a question about where the industry is heading. As much as you can talk about it, given your role, I mean, we've seen a lot of change in the last couple of years, and Mike and I have talked about this before about how we don't necessarily think every automaker will survive it. What do you see changing in the next couple years?
So I'm going to dance around that question as to who may not survive.
Oh yeah, don't name names.
Yeah, we already have. Don't worry, many times on the podcast.
But in general, I've likened the auto industry or auto companies serving national interests the same way that national beers. Like most countries would no sooner let their beer cease to be produced than they would let their auto industry go away. So most countries, perhaps not the U.S., would be very aggressive in protecting their automotive industries. So I think there's going to be a lot of challenges coming up, a lot of partnerships and big dollars spent. But there's a lot of countries that will take active steps to keep their automotive industry competitive. So we may see some consolidations. We may see some more interventions and things that happen. But I think most countries are very proud of their auto industry and want to protect the jobs associated with it. They're high-paying auto industry jobs. So the future it's definitely going to be electrified, and I think that's something we're all struggling with right now. Like you see two really clear different approaches here. One is Toyota is gathering everyone to their hybrid strategy, right? All models are being hybrid standard, and they're pulling all their hybrid pieces together and moving up their electrification very quickly, versus kind of going the other way, which is to go straight over to EVs and slog through the EV era and try to get more consumers to convert, and hopefully get up that S curve and go from 8% EV penetration, as we were here recently, up to 80 as quickly as possible. So is it easier to move your electrified hybrid flock over, or is it easier to build from the ground up? And so there's clearly two separate strategies going on right now it's going to be interesting to watch, and nothing's guaranteed about who's going to win that race.
Yeah, I think what you said is the key point, that electrified, like a hybrid plug-in at minimum is where we're going to go. And I think North America is probably in the whole world a unique case, because we have two massive countries with massive open land that we drive over regularly, where we don't need 880 miles of excursion range, but still people want more range than they need just for that one time a year, which, I mean, that's the same reason people have bought vans or trucks. So you're not going to dissuade them out of that. Whereas Europe and Asia, for like some of the countries, are a lot more dense. They're smaller distances. So it'll be interesting. I think some of the plugins that are coming out are really cool, and I hope more will take the old Volt strategy, which the Ram Charger looks like it's going to be taking. I like that sort of generator and electric motor idea.
Well, it's a big diversified continent, like you were saying. I mean, Canada, US have some areas of very dense population where EVs probably make sense, and we have areas of large travel where EVs may never quite cut it until we get some major technology breakthroughs. So the idea that there is one solution to the future was more brought about, I would say, by Tesla's stock price than anything else. And certainly goals to reduce emissions and improve fuel economy across the fleets of countries. They're all very good goals. But I think ultimately, when Tesla's stock price started to move so quickly, the industry wanted just a little sliver of that valuation. If I electrify, if I go straight to EVs themselves, and can I just get a little piece of that Tesla magic in my stock price and in my personal portfolio? I think was a lot of the driving factor why we went down that road so quickly. It's one of those things now where we look at it and we go, well, of course there wasn't enough demand across all the price points to be able to satisfy the product plans that everyone had. But what's interesting about this era is we devoted so much to EVs, so many resources, R&D, plants and manufacturing facilities to EVs, that when those hit kind of a dead end themselves. But what was interesting though is as the rest of the industry, we were piling back in too quickly in a lot of ways. And we were building too much too fast as here in 24. Well, that capacity was tied up in EVs, so we couldn't overproduce. So we started to produce more, but the reason why things haven't just gone off the rails quickly here is because of how much we had devoted to the EV space that now suddenly we didn't need, which served as a sort of a lid on the pressure. You know, we couldn't just keep building to the end. Now, of course, we have a very old ICE industry portfolio out there that we need to address. But at least, you know, the way EVs worked out, there is a silver lining to the way things have gone here in the past 18 months.
That's positive. That's good news.
Yeah, I mean, there's like we're driving EVs right now. Actually, Kyle and I both. There's plenty of good EVs out there. It's just for people I know that aren't into cars, it's just purely price. And if they match the price one day when more is invested in everything's equal, a lot of people I know would switch over. But right now, they're not willing to pay the premium car versus car.
I appreciate that the people who are objecting to EVs, that it's price, because the people that I know that don't like EVs don't even have a reason. It's just I never want that. I need my car to make noise, and I'm like, but you drive like a regular commuter car. Like I don't get that. I understand sports cars or very head over heart purchases. EVs are always going to have a uphill battle. But when it's like, I don't know, a Corolla or a Camry or something, I'm like, an EV, you wouldn't really miss anything. But then again, a hybrid Camry does 60 miles to the gallon without really trying. So
yeah, it's a good car.
Yeah.
So we've been wondering how quickly Ram, Dodge, Stellantis, whatever you want to call them, are going to bring the V8 back once the ownership changed. And I said this year. Kyle thought that was a long shot. I think I'm going to win this. They want a V8 back there as fast as they can.
Yeah,
I think they do. I don't know if it will be this year. I mean, this year it's wrapping up pretty quickly, but if you're to say probably the next 12 or 15 months or something, I think I don't think it's a big kept secret that we will see it back. But just getting it back, starting something up. I mean, it's like we were saying, a few minutes ago. We invested so much in EVs that we neglected the ICE part of the industry. We're seeing the oldest ICE industry we've seen, at least in the past 10 years, as we were going back and looking at the age of vehicles. And so there has been an underinvestment in ICE vehicles because EVs were so big for the past 5 years. So you own a vehicle, you've had it for 5 or 6 years, and you come back to market and it's the same damn vehicle that you already own, and now your monthly payments are going to virtually double. And so there's that problem there, which is those that haven't freshened their vehicles will run into you're going to have to spend more on incentives, or people are going to pass on wanting to double their payments for the same car they've already just cycled through.
It's funny you say that because I was going to say we had Daniel Cudmore on, and he said he's in that exact situation. He had an F-150 and he went to go buy basically the same truck with the same engine, and it was like $6,000 or $7,000 more. And he's like, well, no. So he just kept his one he has. Yeah,
exactly. And that's even a vehicle though that has had continual investment. Pickup trucks have had that, but you're talking, your run-of-the-mill SUV or European SUV, they haven't invested anything in the ICE side of the business. And now all of a sudden doing a 180, so it's going to take a while to get those back on the road. So even with Stellantis wanting to put the V8s back in their cars, it won't take them nearly as long, perhaps, as the Europeans to correct, but it's still going to take a little bit of time just to get that sorted out again.
I never really thought of it until you're just mentioning it, on how old some of the powertrains out there are. I mean, we know, they're way outliers, like the old 4Runner that finally went away. But there's a lot of manufacturers that have been using the same 2, 3, 4 engines, just being slightly tweaked for a long time. I won't name them, but Well,
the
yeah.
5.7 is 20 years old.
I mean, that was developed. There's some manufacturers that are still making the same supercharged this or turbo that, or just naturally aspirated, and it's gone up and down a handful of horsepower every year, but it's kind of stayed the same. And every time a new model comes out, like, we refined it. It's like you just replace some parts. It's the same engine.
Mike, don't make us nostalgic talking about people making the same supercharged engine. No one makes supercharged engines anymore.
Blackwing.
Yeah, Blackwing.
5-cylinder. Where's the 5-cylinder engine?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now currently we don't have a single V10 in production anymore, I think.
Sounds about right.
Not mainstream it enough. Like calling Lamborghini mainstream is a bit of a stretch.
But Lambo's is gone now. So yeah, I don't think we have a V10 anymore. The world is missing a V10.
What's the 5-cylinder? Just the RS3 and that's it?
Yeah, just RS3.
F1, they're bringing the V10 back.
All the teams were huge on that, which is good. But it's to your sort of point, they went so hybrid crazy for like everything that's going on, and all the fans, me included, are like, these things sound terrible. Right. And the drivers don't like the way they perform. So yeah, bring back some screaming V10s and let's go for it.
Absolutely.
I don't think Formula E caught on as much as they were hoping to. But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're going to have the technology trickle down from F1 again, then I guess we're just going to have V10 everything in a few years. So awesome.
12,000 RPM Honda Passports. Can't wait for it.
Off-roading with a V10. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll let you go. We've taken up enough of your time, but it's been great chatting with you. And we will have you on to talk cars for sure again, and maybe even to talk some of the industry, because it's a little volatile right now in some sectors, especially with this one electric company, but we won't talk about that. Again, thanks for coming on.
Can I tell one anecdote on that?
Heck yes.
I got out of my wife's Tesla the other day. I live in a bedroom community, sleepy community. You know, nothing happens here, right? And I park and I get out and I'm walking into the store, and this super old man says, "I hope no one burns your car." And it's like, how do you respond to that? It's super rude.
Was it a veiled threat?
I know, right?
Start patting down for lighters.
So
it's crazy times right now. It's just one of those, like, I've never seen something 180 on who is the fanatical supporters of a company. Like, the people who despised it now love it, and people who loved it now despise it. It's just crazy.
Right.
But that's 2025, I guess.
Well, I was gonna say Jag has done a pretty big 180 too in the last 6 months, but that's a different sort of story. No one's setting their cars on fire.
That's because they don't have any, but they will soon. They have no cars now that the F-Types did. All right. Well, thanks again. We will chat to you hopefully sometime soon. I'd like to come back to some of these topics talked about maybe in the fall or next year around this time to see how much happened, how much didn't, because I don't envy being in your position and trying to, use the data to predict the future, because curveballs seem to be thrown at us every week right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm calling this the year of the two envelopes, which is by the time I get up to present something, everything has changed. So you have to have something in your back pocket that says the exact opposite of what you're saying. Hopefully, we'll have some clarity here in the next week or 10 days or so, and hopefully all this goes away. The tariffs between United States and Canada make no sense at all. I mean, tariffs including Mexico, it makes no sense. We had a really good thing. The industry was back on its feet. It had taken over 2 years really to get back from the last supply chain issue, and now we seemingly want to go right back into it. So I think most of us on the inside here just want it to go away. Stop using the auto industry as the tip of the spear in some four-dimensional political chess.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. This better than I would, or if it's possible. But Carl and I've talked about this because it's just the topic for the last couple of months. And I said, if this all went into effect, I don't think it's going to bring more production to the U.S. It's just the existing plants are going to have to all become basically flex plants and build vehicles for their market. In Ontario, where Kyle and I live, a lot of our plants already are that, where they can run like multiple model lines. But when we had Ford making the Edge and it wasn't selling enough, they were shipping it, I think, to 36 countries out of here. So it's, the plant's not going to disappear. It's just going to cost a lot to change it. And guess who gets to pay all that money? The consumers. So yeah, I agree. Hopefully it goes away.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
Thanks again. And we will be talking to you down the road. Enjoy the summer, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for the invitation.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. That was a really fascinating interview. It's good to hear, a different side of the automotive business, especially during such a turbulent time. So, looking ahead to what is going on, well, Greg, since you're the special co-host this week, what's going on in your life back home?
I am excited. In about 10 days, I'm going to get behind the wheel of the new 2025 Subaru Outback. I'm looking forward to driving that. It's refreshed for 25. So, again, I've sort of hinted that I like wagons, like what automotive journalist doesn't. So I'm super excited to get behind the wheel of that and probably do a quick takes or some sort of review on that, get some video and have some fun with that.
Nice. Yeah, it's always, that is the wagon, right, on the market. So
it is the wagon on the market right now. There's only a few. But
yeah, and there are rumors. No one will confirm anything to me, but there are rumors that we might see the next level of that very soon in New York. So very curious. For myself, as people who are watching this can see, I am not at home. I am in another hotel in San Diego because this week we are driving the 2025 Ford Bronco Sport and Maverick. Now, these are two vehicles that share a platform, but are very different in their approach. And so actually, I'm still getting sand out of my clothes because yesterday was Bronco Sport and we took it properly off-roading. It was I can't actually say what it was like because there is an embargo in place that will go on after this episode. But we did that. And then today, actually, we're going to be doing Maverick, which includes the new hybrid all-wheel drive model for 25, which I know a lot of people are looking forward to, as well as the Lobo, which is the high-performance street truck version. And there will be an autocross. So I'm fascinated.
Lobo is on top 10 list of things I want to get into this summer. I cannot wait to drive that. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. So I'm doing that. And that's next week will be other press trips. It's just April is kind of nuts. So I'll actually be back in San Diego in a week to drive something else very different, but also in the Ford Empire. So yeah, that's our week. Craig, you have any final thoughts for the week?
We got the New York Auto Show coming up in a couple of weeks. Big news coming out of that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And hey, it's sort of spring. It's baseball season, kind of. So it's an interesting time of year. Hoping to get out and play some golf. It's a good time of year. It's been a long winter, and I guess as I look at this, it's going to be close to freezing though in the next few days. So I don't know. Is it really spring? I don't know.
No one knows anymore. Seasons don't matter. All right. Well, that was another episode of the Auto Guide Show. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. And we will be back next week with, more of the same. Lots of news, lots of exciting stuff, and more drive reviews. So until then, stay safe.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love.